Hi, everyone. Welcome to Theologically Recovering. This is part of the Arise Addiction Recovery Program at Lick Fork Church. And so what we're doing today is we are going to try to finalize the series on Pinocchio. And what we're doing with this portion of our podcast is we are breaking down some of the old Disney cartoons and fairy tales, fables, some of these old archaic stories, and bringing them out in a way to explain them to everybody. Jesus would do that with parables. He would explain the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that sowed seed into his field, and he would tell the farmers and they would understand it. He would tell the fishermen, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that throwed a net into the sea and drug in all manner of fish. The fishermen understood it. He would tell the ones who would that would trade in pearls. He said the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man who found a pearl of great price. And so what we're doing with these is, although it's called Theologically Recovering, we're trying to explain it in such a way that everybody can understand it. That way the person that's maybe never darkened a church door can understand that there is some help for the addict, or the person that's struggling, the sinner out there that needs help, or the churchgoer that maybe Satan has attacked them and say they might as well give up. We're trying to do it in such a way that people would understand it. So what we're doing with this series is we've been going through the 1940 Disney cartoon Pinocchio, and we've done 6 other episodes, and we'll try to finish it out today. But we'll do a quick recap. The first episode dealt with Geppetto getting his aim in the right direction, which I believe is so important for everybody. You got to get your aim in the right direction. Then when the blue fairy comes down and touches Pinocchio, a little puppet made of pine awake, then he said, I can move, I can talk, I can walk. We've used it every time because I believe it's so important. But he said, am I real? And she says, no, in order for Geppetto's wish to come true, it will be entirely up to you. You got to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. 3 responsibilities that you've got to adopt in order for this wooden puppet to become real. And that is what the whole series has been called, the quest to become real. Because we've all at one time been the puppet that's been, something else has pulled our strings. That's what addiction is. It's what sin is. Something else was calling the shots. And so we're trying to move in this right direction. But it's not like we turn from being a puppet to instant that we've got it all figured out the next minute. That's not how this works. This is a progression, and the whole story of Pinocchio is he's making progress. It's subtle, and the animators do a good job of showing you how this little naive puppet comes finally to the place where he rescues his father from the belly of a monster. So it's a progression, but he fails along the way, and I believe that's important for all of us because we're all going to fail. It's not a failure to fall; it's a failure to stay down. Pinocchio is supposed to go to school, so the first thing that he does is when they go to sleep after he's been given the commission, you got to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. As he goes to sleep that night, Geppetto tells him, you got to go to sleep. And he says, why? He said, well, you got to go to school. Why? He says, because you got to be smart. Pinocchio is asking the questions, but Geppetto can't answer them. So the rest of the movie is Pinocchio living out those questions, and he answers them with action. See, it's not just somebody giving you a set of rules to go by that makes it. It's you living those out. And faith without works is dead. So the Bible says you can say you have faith without the works. I'll show you my faith by my works. So just Geppetto telling Pinocchio how to be brave, truthful, and unselfish wouldn't have done it. Pinocchio had to prove those, and he had to live those out. And there was some failure along the way, which I believe speaks to every one of us because we have all failed at one point or another, and probably will continue to fail up until we get our glorified body whenever the Lord comes back, and then it'll all change. But as long as we're in this world, we got a flesh, a nature to deal with, and so the addict, you got to get your aim in the right direction. You got to start moving in the right direction. You got to adopt responsibility. There's some questions that's got to be answered of why, and you've got to live those out. So, but the first thing that happens after Pinocchio asks the questions why is the next day he's on his way to school, and he gets tripped up by the fox. And the fox tells him that there is a easy road to success and an actor's life for me, and he sells him to Stromboli. Well, Pinocchio going from being the puppet to being an actor was a natural progression for the easy way. And what it ends up doing, though, is putting him into a cage, and the blue fairy has to come down and let him go. And he lies to her, which is odd because why would you lie to the one person that could help you? But we do that all the time. We'll lie to the ones that can help us, and we let on like the problems is not so bad, or we live a lie to where we lie to ourselves when we need help. So at this point, finally, Pinocchio is released from the cage. He's made up his mind he's going to do better, and then the fox and the cat catch him again, convince him that he needs to go to Pleasure Island. And when there we see real evil. We see these little boys that are only seeking after pleasure, but there's a coachman that at one point his face at the table when he's talking to the fox and the cat, his face turns into the very face of evil, almost like Satan himself sitting at that table. And what he's doing on Pleasure Island is turning those little boys that are only seeking after pleasure, and he even says, I'm looking for stupid little boys, the disobedient type. And as the night progresses, each one of those little boys are turned into donkeys that are sold into the salt mines. And he snaps the whip at one point, which is I think one of the most powerful scenes in the story, when he snaps the whip and he says, "You boys have had your fun. Now you'll pay for it." And so if we're not careful and we chase after meaningless pleasure, one of these days we'll have to pay for it, and maybe our own lives is already starting to do that. So Pinocchio at this point is a tail pops out on him, his ears pop out. The little boy that's his friend turns into a donkey, and he's gone too far, and all the little boys are gone too far. But Pinocchio, at this point, Jiminy Cricket runs in and tells him, we got to get off this island. So they ascend this mountain, and as they jump out into the unknown, to me it represents that if we stay one more minute on Pleasure Island, we're in danger of being destroyed. And I'll say that with an addict or sinner or anybody else. If we stay in the place we are in big danger of being destroyed. And so Pinocchio, for the first time, listens to his conscience, and he leaps out into the unknown. Well, what happens then is when he comes out on the other side, leaps out into the sea, he still has his donkey tails and his donkey ears, and every now and then he brays like a donkey. And I think we need to understand that once we come out of the world, you don't need to be a hypocrite and act like something you're not. You need to, not that you're proud of what you was, but also at the same time, you don't need to hide that. That's why we're going to do a whole series of testimonies, is because we want people to give their testimonies in to show others, you know what, I've been on Pleasure Island, I've got the donkey tail and the donkey ears, and I was right to the brink of being destroyed, and God saved me, and God will save you. But we got to get off Pleasure Island. You can't stay. You can't live with 1 foot in addiction and 1 foot in recovery. You can't live one foot in the world and one in the church. It just don't work that way. So you got to leap into the unknown. And there are a lot of questions as you leap into the unknown. Well, what if I go and this happens? What if I go? Nobody can answer them. Again, you have to live them out. But I promise you this, that if you don't get off Pleasure Island, it'll destroy you. And if you leap into the unknown, he'll meet you there. The Lord will meet you there and give you the help. So in this last one, which we talked about it a little bit last time, but they go home and they find out that Geppetto, his father, has been swallowed by a whale named Monstro, and he's in the bottom of the sea. And as Jiminy Cricket is reading the letter that the dove dropped down, he's telling him he's alive. He's in the bottom of the sea in Monstro. Pinocchio immediately gets up. He don't debate on it. He just simply gets up, and Jiminy Cricket asks him, he says, well, where are you going? And he said, I got to go get him. So at this point, as Pinocchio has failed time and again, now we see that all those failures has made him strong. Whenever, he'd been the actor, he'd been on Pleasure Island, he had to face the unknown, he still got the donkey tail, the donkey ears, but it's made him stronger. And so use that as a springboard for yourself. As, okay, you failed before, use that as an opportunity to make you stronger, and then to be able to go and help others. See, it's not just about getting help ourselves, but it's also helping others. As a matter of fact, one of the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is to go and help other addicts, because it's part of your own recovery. It helps you too. But just like a Christian is not just somebody that gets saved and sits back and waits for death or the rapture of the church. Then you've got to go and try to help everybody else out there. So you have to go back and face that unknown. And again, there are a lot of questions as you do that, but you got to adopt the responsibility. You got to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. And to be a Christian, it takes courage. It don't take courage to be a sinner. It takes courage to be a Christian. You don't have to be truthful as a sinner. You have to be truthful as a Christian. Unselfish, the very definition of being a Christian is to be Christ-like, and Christ came to set men free. And no greater love hath any man than this, than he laid down his life for his friends. And So we have been commissioned to go and to share this gospel with everyone, and if it need be, to put our own life on the line for that. So Pinocchio has to, he's ready. I mean, it's not just that he has to, it's that he is ready to do it. It just is it's his nature now to go and rescue his father. See, the Bible says that in one point it talks about the day I separate my sheep from my goats. It says the goats, which are the ones that are not saved, and the sheep are. He said, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. He tells the sheep. And they said, well, Lord, we didn't know we was doing that to you. And he's like, that's right. When you done it to the least of these, my brethren, you done it unto me. The goats, he says, I was hungry and you didn't feed me. I was thirsty and you didn't give me drink. I was in prison, you didn't come to me. Sick, you didn't visit me. And they said, Lord, if we know that was you. And he's like, that's the point. You was trying to reason it out. If you thought you could gain something by it, then you was willing to do it. The sheep was just willing to do it because they was these new creatures. Well, Pinocchio, he has changed the whole time. By this point now that he's faced everything that he has, as soon as he hears that his father needs help, he gets up and starts walking to the sea. And Jiminy Cricket's like, where are you going? He said, I got to go to him. Then he stands up on top of the cliff, ties the tail around around a rock, and he jumps into the sea. So he's burdened himself with this rock. He's given him no way out. He's like, I'm going in, and I'm making up my mind that I am going to go down, and I'm going to find Monstro. And as he jumps into the sea, Jiminy Cricket is trying to talk him out of it, but also tell him to tie the knot real tight. And he tells him, which Jiminy Cricket represents his conscience. He tells him, he said, goodbye, Jiminy. And Jiminy says, goodbye. He said, hey, I might be live bait down there, but I'm going with you. So at this time, his conscience and Pinocchio come together with the same mindset. And so it gives Pinocchio strength to go and do what he needs to do. So he jumps into the sea, and everyone that he names, it's all the fish come by, and he say, can you tell me where Monstro is? Well, every time they mention the name Monstro, all the fish run away, because it is this terrible monster, this terrible whale that they're all afraid of. But Pinocchio, because of the things that's happened in his life, now he's willing to put his life on the line to go and face this terrible monster. So we see Monstro asleep. He's asleep at the bottom of the sea. And inside it shows you what's happening. While Pinocchio is looking for Geppetto, or looking for Monstro, knowing that Geppetto is inside, we see Geppetto. And Geppetto he's inside, he's starving to death, he's sick, and he's dying. He's got the fish and the cat with him. And this is what he's saying to him. He said, I never thought it would end like this. Starving to death in the bottom of a whale. He says it's hopeless. And they're fishing. They've got their fishing lines out. His ship that he was in has been swallowed, so they're sitting on the ship and they're trying to fish, but they even say at one point they've not caught fish in days. They've not had anything to eat in days. So Geppetto has already given up. Geppetto is Pinocchio's father, but he's already given up. Now, again, Pinocchio is coming to help him, but had Pinocchio not faced the things that he had before, he wouldn't have had the strength to come and try to help him. So as we have faced things before in our life, although we don't need to glorify our sin, but also at the same time, it's made us stronger to where we can face some things and we can help other people. So Pinocchio is looking for him, but something happens there whenever he finally sees Monstro, because Monstro wakes up and he starts chasing. He's catching these fish, probably tuna or whatever, but he's chasing these fish, and Pinocchio sees Monstro, and even then there's some fear in him. He starts trying to swim away, although he's been looking for him. At this moment, when he sees Monstro, it terrifies him, because I don't know it. He had confronted evil before, but now he is seeing it's like the hierarchy. This is the top of the line. Now, when he sees it, he does try to get away, but Monstro swallows him. And so when he swallows Pinocchio, Pinocchio goes inside. Well, at this point, Geppetto has jumped up and he's catching the fish, because just a minute before he was sure that he was going to die. He was going to starve to death. Well, he's catching the fish, but as he catches one of them, Pinocchio's got it by the tail and he pulls it up. Well, Pinocchio, he yells for him. He says, Father. But Geppetto is so that he doesn't even realize that Pinocchio's there. And this is what he says. He says, don't bother me now, Pinocchio. And he's trying to catch fish, and then it dawns on him, Pinocchio's here. So he says, Pinocchio, and he says, Father, but Geppetto runs up and tries to hug Pinocchio, and a fish jumps up and he hugs the fish. And so, but it's like this man, this Geppetto, although he was Pinocchio's father, and although he was the one that had carved him, at this point, it's like Pinocchio, they have changed roles. And now Pinocchio has come to rescue his father. His father seems to be absent-minded. The illustrators make that as to where it's like he's absent-minded. He's only focused on the here and now. He's convinced that he's going to die, and all he's worried about is just trying to catch a fish to live for a few more days. But he doesn't realize that help is there. Now that help is there, Pinocchio has to adopt the responsibility. He has to be the one that rescues his father. See, we've started a program at the church with our youth program. We've really ramped it up over the last couple of years, especially, and even more so here lately. And what I see with that is, we need young people. We need our young people to come and adopt the responsibility. The Bible says, "Let the elder teach the younger," and we need to be teaching our younger, because one of these days it's going to come to where the younger will be the one that rescues us. If a church doesn't have young people, it's doomed to failure. I mean, it's just common sense will tell you that if a church does not have young people, after a while, it'll have to close. After a while, it'll be, there'll be no church left. So we always say that, but I think sometimes we use it as a cliche. Well, it's the church in Mar. Well, Pinocchio come to rescue Geppetto, and if it hadn't been for Pinocchio, Geppetto would have died in the belly of that fish. Well, what we're trying to do is teach our young people, or teach the addict, or whatever else, the sinner that comes in, that if you'll adopt the responsibility, if you'll make this your quest and not just come in, I don't want to reach you a set of rules to make you fit in with the church. I don't want to just stand and tell you every theological thing for you to memorize. I want you to be able to live that out. That way, when you become this real person, that way, when the time comes to when we need the younger, then they'll be able to fill that role. See, just as it's went through the years, our church has been there for over 100 years. Well, they've been saints of God that's held that bloodstained banner up. Well, as they passed on and went on to their reward, well, somebody else had to fill the gap in. Somebody else had to take the banner up, and it's one by one. So where we're at now, now we've picked up the banner, but there'll come a time, if time lasts, that somebody else will have to take up that banner. And so we don't want to produce hypocrites out of our children. We don't want to produce actors in a play. We don't want to produce those that only seek after pleasure. It's one of the things that I really bothers me about the prosperity message. It's all about pleasure now. That's not how this is. As a Christian, you have to take up your cross. The Bible says that. Whoever is not willing to take up their cross, whoever is not willing to forsake everything, is not worthy. And so you have to adopt the responsibility. And that's actually, if you look at psychology, that's one of the marks of happiness marks of a meaning in life is a responsibility. It's not just about happiness or about success. It's about having a purpose in life and feeling like that you are adopting the responsibility that you need to. So Pinocchio has to adopt the responsibility, and the day comes whenever he's the one who'll rescue his father. So whenever Geppetto, he hugs Pinocchio, and they're all excited. But then this is what Geppetto says. He says, "Let me take a look at you." But he realizes that Pinocchio is not the same little wooden puppet that left. The last time he saw him, he was on his way to school. The very first day that Pinocchio was alive. As far as Blue Fairy making him into something that could move. The next morning he's heading to school, and Geppetto has not seen him since. He's been tricked twice by the fox and the cat, so he's not seen him since then. So the last thing he saw was a little naive puppet that is heading off to school. And now when he looks at him, the world has made its mark on him. And he sees that. That's what the ears and the tail and he brays like a donkey. So when he first sees him, he says, "Pinocchio," and it's, he knew something had changed with him. He says, "Those ears." And Pinocchio, he says, "Ears," and he starts laughing. He said, "Oh, these," he said, "that's nothing." He said, "I've got a tail too." And he starts laughing, and when he does, he brays like a donkey. Well, his father is sitting there, and he's appalled by it. But I thought what's interesting here is that Pinocchio, as he embraces his father, he's not ashamed in front of his father to say, yes, I've got these ears, I've got this tail, and even when he brays like the donkey, he's not ashamed of that. And I think sometimes what happens is people are so ashamed of what they've done that they won't, that it hinders them. They either become the hypocrite or they act like there's something they're not, or they won't come at all. And so Pinocchio, as he knows his father loves him, he's not embarrassed to say, yeah, you know what, not only have I got ears, I've also got a tail, and every now and then my life turns into the bray of a donkey. And so I don't want anybody to be ashamed of what they've done. I don't care what your lifestyle, I don't care what you've done, I don't care, I do not care. I don't care how far sin has taken you. I don't care what effect that sin has made on your life. I want you to come, and I want you to feel comfortable enough to be able to talk to us, and that's how it should be. I'm not saying glorify your sin. Again, I want to say that, but I also at the same time don't want it to be a stumbling block to you, because I know how the devil does. They will say, well, you've went too far, or you've done this. And, if they really knew who you was, or they really knew what you've done, I don't care what you've done. I couldn't care less. If you knew what I've done, they wouldn't let me be people probably wouldn't want me to be a pastor of a church. That I don't care about that. The Apostle Paul said, I'm the chief of sinners. He had murdered Christians and made them blaspheme and had put them in prison and everything else. And so Paul said, I'm the chief of sinners. And a matter of fact, if you want to get technical about it, the person that wants to look down their nose and act holier than thou is probably the least spiritual person that you'll find. Because the Apostle Paul, when he first started preaching, he said, I'm not a whit behind the chiefest apostle. What he was saying is, I'm just as good as the 12. Then as time goes on, he said, well, I'm the least of the apostles. Or the least of the disciples or apostles. Then he said, I'm the least of all saints. So each time he's reducing it. And finally, when he gets to the end, he said, "O wretched man," Romans chapter 7, "O wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death?" Because the closer he got to the Lord, the more he realized that he wasn't everything in himself. It was like, okay, I recognize my sin. So when a person comes in as an addict or a sinner or whatever else, again, they're interchangeable, I don't want you to be ashamed of that. I don't want you to sit and be so ashamed of the donkey tail and the donkey ears that you won't even get your help. At this point, Pinocchio, he tells Geppetto, he's like, yeah, I've got ears, but I've also got a tail. And he brays like a donkey. And at this point, he's not embarrassed, but Geppetto is looking at him and he says, "Pinocchio, what's happened to you?" And the first time you see Pinocchio get embarrassed of it. At the first, he wasn't embarrassed, but whenever Geppetto points it out, and he's like, "What's happened to you?" And it's bothering him so bad. And it's not that, in Pinocchio, maybe the way he looks at it, I know it's a cartoon, but maybe the way he looks at it is it's embarrassing to do it in front of his father. But what his father is looking at is it bothers him that the world had took such a toll on him. But at the one point, he gets embarrassed, and Pinocchio says, and at that point, Geppetto says, "Oh, never mind. He said, Geppetto has his little wooden head and nothing else matters," and he hugs him. And so, again, Pinocchio is not ashamed of what he was, of what had happened to him. So we need to understand that. You don't need to be ashamed of anything that you've done. Don't care what sin, addiction, or whatever else you've done. You need the Lord, and we love everybody that comes in. We want to see everybody get help, and so you don't need to be ashamed of that. But at this point, Geppetto, he's listening to, or Pinocchio is listening to Geppetto, and Geppetto starts telling him, he said, "I've tried everything to get out of here." He said, "We've built a raft, and we've tried everything, and it's hopeless." So Geppetto has already given up. And you'll meet those people along the way that just feels like that there's no hope left. Well, you adopting the responsibility to be brave, truthful, and unselfish, and willing to face the unknown, and willing to face the monster, and willing to put your life on the line, then it's your job. It doesn't matter how long they've been in it. I've seen some people that they could do real good with younger converts, but when they talk to the older ones, it's like they won't tell them, or they won't open up to them because they feel like that for some reason that they don't need help. Well, everybody needs help. I don't care if you've been in it 50 years, and if you got to the point where you've already given up, and I've seen people do that. I've seen people that get lukewarm or get cold that's been in church for years because it seems like they've tried things and it's not worked, and it makes them cynical or bitter or whatever else. Well, we don't need to just go along with that. If the Lord has give you a commission, then He's give you a commission to do something. I preach to people that's been in church 50 years longer than I have, but it doesn't matter. I just know what my commission is, know what I need to do, and you know what you need to do. So we're trying to help people, and that's help new converts, addicts, sinners, saints, and alike. So Geppetto has been saying that he's tried to do everything, and he's given up. But Pinocchio has not given up. Pinocchio's just there, and that's the importance of having youth, is that the Bible says without a vision, the people perish. Well, the vision means a vision from the Lord. Without that vision from the Lord, the people perish. So when we lose our vision, then we'll end up just sitting back and dying. So Geppetto had already made up his mind that he's going to just catch a few fish here and there, probably starve to death. He's already got a cold, he's coughing, and so he's probably going to die. But Pinocchio's not ready to give up that easy. So Pinocchio begins to say, let's build a fire, because Geppetto says, well, let's build a fire and fix these fish. And Pinocchio says, a fire, so he starts breaking the furniture down. And Geppetto is watching him, but it's as Pinocchio tells what he's going to do. He said, we're going to build a fire, and we're going to make him sneeze. And it's not just him talking about it. It's also him doing it. He's breaking down the furniture. And so he's tearing down everything that he's relying on in the past. I talk about children learning to walk. A child will never learn to walk as long as it tries to hold on to something. And it's how they learn to walk. They pull themselves up. But we've saw kids try to step out, and they can have one finger on something, and they can walk. But it's when they turn loose, that's when they'll end up failing or falling. But they have to do that in order to ever learn how to walk and then run. But that you can't hang on to the past. So what you've got to do is you've got to step out sometimes. Sometimes you just got to put into action a plan. And Pinocchio, as he's saying, well, we're going to make him sneeze, he's also tearing down everything and using it for firewood to make him sneeze. Well, Geppetto says something. He says, well, that'll make him mad. Well, who cares if it makes him mad? I mean, man, the thing has swallowed him in a whale. Let's think of it from a spiritual standpoint. Some people just stand and be a punching bag for the devil, and they don't want to rock the boat any, and they don't want to put the devil under their feet, or they don't want to get victory. It's like, well, I don't want to rock the boat. Well, you better rock the boat. And so it's Geppetto is saying, well, that's going to make him mad. Well, who cares if he gets mad? Man, he swallowed him. He's going to die if he stays where he's at. So we'll make him mad. So that's what Pinocchio's trying to do. Pinocchio's building the fire to where it will make him sneeze and make him cough him out. So the whole time the smoke's billowing up, and Geppetto is this negative voice. Again, Pinocchio has to adopt the role of the father at this point. It's like the roles reverse, and Pinocchio is the one that's adopted the responsibility. Well, Geppetto is telling him it'll never work, and Pinocchio says, yes, it will. Then Geppetto says, well, we'll never get past those teeth because the smoke has started billowing up and the whale has opened its mouth. Well, they're taking the raft and they're trying to get out. But the whole time Geppetto he's paddling, but he's saying it won't work. And if we're not careful, we'll listen to all the negativity around us. It'll tell us why things won't work. You mark it down. You come to get help, sinner, an addict, whatever, and you come to get help, there'll always be somebody say, well, you can't do it. Well, you're wasting your time, and I've seen people do this before, and it's like, yeah, it will work, and I'm not going to listen to you. And more than that, I'm not going to just sit back and die. Again, we go back to that scripture, the prodigal son in the hog pen. He says, I will arise. He said, I'm going to starve to death. That's what the text says, Luke 15. I perish with hunger. Well, I'm going to sit here and starve to death unless I do something. The lepers outside the gate of Samaria, if we stay here, we're going to starve to death. Go right back to this story. Geppetto, if he stays where he's at, he may catch a few fish and be able to live for a few more days, but he knows he's starving to death. He's already been here once, and he's starving to death. And if something doesn't change, he's going to die. But at the same time, when somebody comes along with help, this negativity takes over, and he's like, it won't work, it won't work. And Pinocchio doesn't care what his father says at this point. He's like, yes, it will work. I come here to help you. And so when you go to people, the sinner may sit there in the church pew, the devil whisper in their ear, well, this won't work, this won't work. Yeah, it will work. And that's why we keep doing what we do. I don't care what somebody's done. I know this will work. I know that. I know if God could save me, he can save anybody. If he can take me out of the bondage I was in, he can take anybody out of the bondage. And so Pinocchio is saying, yes, it will work. And they get out. But when they get out, Monstro, they come out of his mouth, but now Monstro is attacking them. Monstro is mad. And listen, whenever you rock the devil's cage, or you rattle his cage, you're going to make him mad. But whenever you come out, whenever you come out of addiction, whenever you come out of the sin, out of the hog pen, it's going to make the devil mad. But you've got to do something. So the Monstro begins attacking them, and at this point, Geppetto starts drowning. And he tells Pinocchio, go save yourself. And he's slipping down into the water. Pinocchio could have got away, but Geppetto is telling him, go on, Pinocchio. But that's not what Pinocchio came for. Pinocchio came to set him free. And so by doing that, he was going to go all the way. And of course, you go back to the story of Christ himself. From the very beginning, he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captive, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. And Jesus went all the way with that. Well, Pinocchio had a commission, and Pinocchio came to save his father. And there was nothing, although the monster was attacking, Monstro the whale was attacking, although he was billowing out the smoke and the flames and everything else, Pinocchio had made up his mind, I am going to rescue my father, and there's nothing going to stop me. I'll die if I have to, but I'm willing to go all the way. And that's really what we need as Christians. We need to adopt that mentality that whatever it takes, Charlton Heston one time stood up at the NRA convention, and he said, if they take my guns, they'll pry them out of my cold, dead hands. And I thought it would be, that's how the church needs to be. If you're going to take my neighbors, if you're going to take my friends, if you're going to take my family, you're going to have to climb over my cold, dead body to get it. You're going to climb over the church. The church is supposed to stand as the line of defense, to stand and tell everybody, to be the beacon of light. You are the light of the world. You're the salt of the earth. And so it's our responsibility to stand and say, yes, it'll work. Yes, you can get some help, and I'm not going to let you go. I'm not going to turn you loose. I don't care what you've done. I don't care if you failed. That bothers me so bad, is that we'll see people come in that get saved, and then the devil will trip them up, and then we turn around and let them go. It's like some people, all they're worried about is just getting somebody to go to an altar one time, but then when they fail, they're ready to pick up stones and stone them. No, that's not the way this is supposed to work. The way this is supposed to work is, all right, whatever it takes, however far we got to go. We got to go that extra mile, whatever we've got to do. I do not want to see you get destroyed. So Pinocchio came to set Geppetto free. But at this point, even though he'd got out, even though he'd got out of the belly of the whale, now he was drowning again. Now he was in danger, and it looked hopeless, and he says, go on. But Pinocchio said, nope, not going to happen. And so he gets Geppetto, and he's dragging him out, and the monster's attacking. And right as the whale jumps to, makes the leap to swallow him up again, Pinocchio pulls him through this hole. But when he does, the impact, it kills Pinocchio. And we see Geppetto come out on the other side, and he wakes up, and he still thinks he's dying and drowning, and he realizes he's been saved by Pinocchio. But then you look over, and there this little wooden puppet he's face down, and he's died because he saved Geppetto's life. And so Geppetto was lamenting over that, and he's saying, my brave little boy. And he realizes that Pinocchio saved him. And so he's got him, they take him home, and they lay him on the bed. And they're all crying, and they're all mourning over Pinocchio's death. Well, from the very beginning, the Blue Fairy has told him, he says, you got to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. And so we hear these words again as the Blue Fairy comes down and says, prove yourself brave, truthful, and unselfish, and someday you'll be a real boy. And then she says the words, awake, Pinocchio. And now something happens. That change happens. And Pinocchio is no longer, well, he's no longer dead, but he's alive. Thing that happens to us, is it's a new birth. And so, but he's also not even the same thing that he was. Before he was a wooden puppet, and now all of his features change. It's Pinocchio, but he's a real boy. And so he asks his father. Pinocchio wakes up and he says, "Why are you crying, Father?" And it says, "Because you're dead, Pinocchio." Geppetto doesn't understand. In his mind, it's over. In his mind, he's already lost Pinocchio. And Pinocchio says, "No, I'm not." And he says, "Yes, you are. Now lie down." And Pinocchio says, but Father, I'm alive, and I'm a real boy." And it dawns on Geppetto. It's like, okay, now he's real. Now he's a real boy. Now he's alive. And there's a celebration, of course, that goes along with it, and the movie closes out. But this is a spiritual. Again, this is so deep in spiritual meaning that we could use, because Pinocchio went from being a puppet to an actor, to Pleasure Island, to facing the unknown, to facing the monster, to adopting responsibility, and now at the end, now he is real. And as the movie closes out, they are having a celebration, and we'll go back to Luke 15, because the prodigal son had came back home. He said, "I will arise and I'll go to my father." And he began to make his way back, and who knows how many hardships he had to face between the hog pen and Father's house. But when he gets at Father's house, this is what the Bible says in Luke chapter 15. It says in Luke 15:21, "And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to the servants, Bring forth the best robe, and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet, and bring hither the fatted calf, and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and is found." And they began to be merry. Because that prodigal son said, "I will arise." Again, that's our program. I will arise, go to my father. I will arise and adopt the responsibility. I will arise and face what I've done in the past. When that prodigal son came back home, just like the story of Pinocchio, whenever he comes and finds his father, he had the donkey tail and the donkey ears. It was the effects of sin had made its mark on him. But his father did not focus on that. His father instead was the only thing he was worried about is that his son had been lost and now he was home, that he'd been dead and now he's alive. And so with this, again, we want to emphasize this. I don't care what you've done. I don't care what effects the sin has done, or the drugs, or the alcohol, the addiction, whatever it is. I don't care what that's had on you. I don't care. I want you to just come. I just want you to make up your mind. I got to get to Father's house, and I promise you there's hope for you. If you get your aim in the right direction, if you'll adopt the responsibility, if you'll live out the why, if you won't give in to meaningless pleasure, if you won't come and simply try to be an actor in a play and pretend to be something you're not, and you'll embrace the commission that's been given to you, one of these days then you can stand and you'll be the one that goes back. That's what the addiction recovery is. Every addiction recovery program is addicts that are going back, adopting that responsibility, and going back and rescuing others that have been in the same thing. Just like I said, when Pinocchio jumped out into the unknown, into that sea to begin with, to escape, when he comes out the other side, now he has a commission to go back and to rescue somebody else that was in that sea. Once the addict has made the leap and has gotten away and gotten help and gotten victory, now you have proved yourself to be brave, truthful, and now it's time to be unselfish and to go back and to try to get everybody out there that's struggling with the same problems that we had, and we're trying to get them to come and find the help. Again, the old saying is evangelism is one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread at. All we're doing is we're sinners saved by grace, and we're trying to see others get the same help that we had. So we hope you enjoyed the Pinocchio series, and we love you. God bless you.